Many thousands of African asylum seekers, they've found refuge in Israel over the last decade plus, but that only came after their narrow escape from torture and slavery along the human trafficking routes of Egypt's Sinai Desert. But their poor mental health from that ordeal is now in focus, as Israel's health ministry claims that help's on the way, but as i24NEWS' Sarah Chalala reports, it may be far from adequate to address the issues.
تعذبت مثلهم في عندي قلت لك في جسمي عندي حرق أنا أساساً كنت بعاني من تراوما اللي شفته
كتير صعب من الحالة النفسية.
It's often said that mental illness is not a choice, recovery is. But for these African refugees and asylum seekers living in Israel, and for many others, recovery isn't always an option they can choose for reasons beyond their control.
They don't have insurance, they don't have access to medical care, not to mention mental health care. So it all amounts to an exacerbation of their situation.
Their situation's still hard for them to stomach, even after about a decade in Israel, from the northeast and east coast of Africa, where their journey started, to the deserts of the Sinai Peninsula, then into Israel through its border crossing with Egypt, from human smuggling to human torture.
There's this phenomenon of torture camps that was once operating in the Sinai Peninsula, where African migrants were kidnapped, held captive and tortured by smugglers. Now, out of 20 to 25,000 Eritrean and Sudanese asylum seekers currently living in Israel, human rights organisations estimate that about 4,000 of them are survivors of those camps.
All the time there were smugglers assisting them, crossing the borders to Egypt and from Egypt to Israel. This has not changed. What changed was that the smugglers got smarter and they realized that they can take money not only for the smuggling, they can only put them in underground containers or whatever and make them work for their money and torture them and get money from their families.
Fuad suffered 4 months of torture before reaching Israel in late 2011.
لما اصطدمنا مع البدو مسكونا طبعا يعني شيء كتير كان بشع يعني كالعبيد يعني الكتب اللي كنا بندرسها وكنا بنسمع بها في زمن السليفز يعني شفتها بعيوني.
They chained all of us together. It's like one chain, like 10 persons, 15 persons in one chain. And they're burning the plastic in our body and everywhere. They broke my arm and my fingers. Only there is one way to be released, or you have to pay your money, $8,000, or you will die and they sell your organs.
It was only after 2 months of this torture that Yasser eventually found safety in Israel in 2011.
Only me that decided to go to Israel. The remaining friends that they went to the Salom refugee camp.
Do you know what happened to them?
Yeah, they are in the United States, all of them.
Really?
Yeah.
Quite a contrast from the Egyptian city of Arish, the capital of the North Sinai Governorate of Egypt, an area under the power of the Bedouins.
ما فيش government في مصر بيجي الناحية بتاعت العريش.
But trekking across borders like this because of conflict, persecution, violence and human rights violations back home means more than 100 million people in the world have been forced to flee their homes. That's 1 in every 78 people on Earth. And from this number, an estimated 4.5 million are asylum seekers, more than 32.5 million are refugees. But the thousands who do make it to Israel are not welcomed by the government, who's since built a wall to keep people out.
What is the policy towards this population? And some people say there is no policy, what should we do? And maybe this non-existent policy is the policy in order to frustrate asylum seekers and victims of human trafficking and make them realize, understand that they will never be granted health rights and welfare services in Israel in order to keep them out of the country. And this is the policy.
The prevalence of PTSD symptoms, anxiety and depression among asylum seekers who have been through the Sinai is about 7 times higher than those of their Israeli peers, but mental health services are few and far between.
This mental health clinic is the only clinic in Israel serving the needs of refugees and asylum seekers free of charge. Ruth Clinic is only accessible to those with no insurance and no official standing within the country. But being the only one of its kind in Israel makes demand quite high.
We have 220 patients and about half of them present PTSD symptoms. The more places that will give therapy to this needed population, the better.
The solution, at least for now, in the eyes of Israel's health ministry, is a mental health program set to cater to about 250 African refugees with PTSD symptoms. It's still yet to be launched at Ichilov Hospital, and it's also being met with mixed reaction.
I'm very skeptical at the moment. First, they changed it from a pilot program to a much more modest program. Now we're hoping that this more modest program will at least materialize.
Basically, we don't know what is going to be with this new service, this new clinic. Even if this is going to happen, it's a drop in the ocean, really. Like what they will do with all the rest.
i24NEWS did reach out to the ministry for further comment.
The health ministry sees great importance in providing psychological support to the population that needs it. This program is expected to be launched after Passover, when already today, and even before the opening of the dedicated clinic, approximately 25% of target population receive treatment. We believe that with the opening of the service, it will be possible to reach the entire population with high-quality answers adapted to their needs.
But Physicians for Human Rights Israel says those numbers don't quite add up.
Assuming that approximately 200 to 250 people receive treatment through the Ruth Clinic at any one time, not all of them Sinai victims, by the way, and in light of the estimated couple of thousands of people in need, I would say that this number is incorrect. The fact that the health ministry interviewed approximately 250 to 300 such victims does not imply that there are only 300 victims living in Israel.
All that's left now is hope for a more comprehensive, sustainable solution and a mental health program that will soon materialise. Sarah Shalala for i24NEWS, Tel Aviv.